Flames climbed the pine like orange ladders, licking the black sky above 413 Quince Trace. My porch swing shrieked and dropped. The night smelled like gasoline and hot pennies. Across the cul-de-sac, Karen Winthrop, our tiny HOA president with a megaphone voice, stood smiling, phone out, recording everything. As a retired senior judge, divorced, the quiet man on the corner. Sirens wailed nearer. A neighbor tried a hose that hissed into steam. Karen yelled, "Violations have consequences, merit," like my burning home was a lesson plan. Sparks landed on my coat. The streetlights blinked and died. Before we continue, please drop a like and comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Australia, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back, tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Firefighters dragged lines, boots pounding, faces hard. My sister, Zadie, pulled up, robe flapping, eyes wet. She grabbed my shoulders, repeating my name like a spell. The roof fell inward with a boom, blowing ash into the night. Windows burst like small bombs. People covered their mouths, whispering my secrets for me. I remember the heat against my eyelids more than the noise. I remember Karen's glittery clipboard reflecting the fire like a mirror from hell. I remember thinking, this is not a house fire. This is a message. When the last flame sighed out, nothing stood but the brick chimney and my stubborn heartbeat. The arson investigator asked careful questions. I answered slow, too slow. Zadie rubbed my back in circles like when I had shingles. Karen circled the crowd like a tour guide, giving running commentary about community standards. I stared at her shoes, clean as a courtroom. She looked like someone rehearsing victory. I did not sleep that night. I watched gray smoke drift toward the clock tower on Morrow Glen Boulevard. Dawn turned the ash field into glitter. I picked up a warped spoon and felt 50 years slide out of my chest. I had known courtroom fireworks. This was a different kind and meaner. By afternoon, I'd filed the police report and called every number that ever owed me a favor. Zadie made coffee strong enough to stand on. The phone kept buzzing with neighbor rumors. The HOA group chat cheered, "Order restored," then deleted the thread. My anger cooled into something sharp and patient. 3 days later, I took the bench for a routine civil docket in Brackendale County. My nameplate still smelled like lemon polish. The bailiff called the first case, Ferris Hollow HOA versus Merritt L. Calhoun. The door opened. Karen walked in wearing pearls and a smile. I gripped the gavel and froze. I'm 80 now, telling you this like a porch story, but it started months earlier when Karen got herself elected HOA president of Ferris Hollow. She lived on Willow Kestrel Way, in a house that looked allergic to kids. She used a whistle for everything, even the annual barbecue. Karen's first letter to me was about my mailbox, which she said leaned like a drunken scarecrow. Her second was about my paint color, creekstone fog, which apparently was too moody for the block. She fined me for a non-conforming porch chime. The chime sounded like wind and childhood. I paid nothing. Zadie visited on Fridays, bringing me sweet tea and gossip. She called Karen Clipboard Cleopatra and made faces behind hedges. Zadie had her own storms, bad knee, stubborn landlord, a son at a faraway base. We were our small family, survivors who measured time by holidays and court calendars. We protected each other. Karen didn't like that I'd been a judge. She'd say, "Retired or not, your grass still grows," like fairness was weeds. She stared at my driveway like it had committed a crime. At meetings, she spoke in rules, not sentences. Folks laughed along because it felt easier than telling her to sit down. The fines turned into letters with red stamps. The red stamps grew teeth. One notice said my defiant noncompliance threatened property values. Another claimed a lien was imminent and irreversible. On the bottom, tiny print asked for payment through a company I'd never heard of, Meridian Anchor Services, P.O. Box somewhere ridiculous. Then strange things happened. A credit card arrived I hadn't applied for, with a balance I hadn't made. A cable account appeared in my name 2 towns over. Zadie's medical bill was mailed to my address with her middle name misspelled. Someone played puzzle pieces with our lives. My stomach felt like ice. I got a call late one night, heavy breath, then a whisper, "Pay the fines, old man." The line clicked. I sat in the dark and counted backwards from 50 like I once told juries to do. The next morning, my car tires had nails in them that looked new and chosen. At the HOA meeting in the clubhouse on Alder Rush Court, I asked about Meridian Anchor Services. Karen shrugged and said, "We use vendors now." Her eyes slid away like slippery glass. Dorian Pike, the HOA treasurer, shuffled papers with unsteady hands. I saw numbers that didn't line up with any 2 plus 2. I changed the locks and still felt watched. The street camera I'd set up caught a hooded figure pausing at my porch, then stopping at Zadie's car to slip something beneath a windshield wiper. It was a flyer about community pride, signed by Karen in bubbly letters. The edges were damp like fresh rain. Zadie said, "She wants you to know it's her," and tucked the flyer into a Ziploc like evidence. "Or she wants us to think it's her," I said. Being a judge taught me 2 truths. People lie, and people brag. Karen did both while posing as the neighborhood's dentist, drilling where no one asked. I went to the bank to check my accounts. A clerk with careful hair asked if I'd moved to Silverbend Estates, because a forwarding request existed. I had not. The clerk canceled it, eyes wide. I asked for copies. The signature on the form was mine, but the curl on them leaned wrong. The brakes on my Buick failed on Burnett Ridge. I pumped the pedal and prayed. The guardrail kissed my door, and the car shuddered to a stop like an old dog. The mechanic said the brake line looked cut. He used the word sliced. I used the word why, and the world felt smaller. I started carrying a notebook again, cheap and blue, like I did on the bench. Every page got a date, a detail, a face. I wrote down Meridian Anchor, Dorian Pike, Sweaty, Karen, Vendors, and Brake Line. Zadie added, "Call Felix Harper at County Clerk," because Felix owed me a favor from a messy adoption case. That night a rock broke the kitchen window. The glass made a sound like spilling marbles. The rock wore a rubber band and a message, "Fines double tomorrow." I told the police. They wrote things down and promised patrols. Karen posted safety tips to the community board like she'd invented locks. At dawn I smelled gasoline near the oak. I followed the trail to a patch of dirt tucked behind my air unit. A small metal can lay there like a sin. Someone had rehearsed. I thought about how close people can stand to you in life and still choose to set you on fire. Tuesday came mean and hot. I left the porch light on in daylight because it felt brave. Zadie sat with me, knitting with hands that shook. We drank tea that tasted like fear and sugar. At noon, Karen marched past with a tape measure, checking fence heights, a queen inspecting her chessboard. I told Zadie to go home, but she refused. "Families don't leave," she said, and that sentence tied a knot in my throat. We waited. At 2, a trash can down the block flared up like a candle. Firefighters arrived, put it out, and shook their heads. A test run. We both knew it. A letter slipped under my door, compliance agreement enclosed. It demanded payment to Meridian Anchor within 24 hours, or the HOA would escalate enforcement. The letterhead had a watermark I recognized from court exhibits, a globe with tiny anchors. It had floated through cases like a ghost. I'd never pinned it down. Night fell inch by inch. I slept in my chair with a fire extinguisher on my lap. The cat from Alder Rush visited my porch, then left fast, like even animals had opinions. Around midnight, I heard footsteps, then silence. The air held its breath. A car door clicked. The dark sizzled, then stayed still. Morning brought a second practice. Someone lit a strip of newspaper under the hedge. It smoked and died because of dew. I watered the dead grass and told the air I was watching. Karen strode by in gym clothes, phone pressed to her cheek, saying the word vendor like a prayer you say for cash. The mechanic called. The part for my brake line had gone missing. That made no sense unless it made too much sense. I thanked him and wrote it down. Paper is a net. Catch enough fish and you know what river they came from. I circled Meridian Anchor so hard the page wrinkled. That night, as Zadie locked her sedan to drive home, a white van rolled slow, window down, smell of smoke trailing it. A voice oozed out, "Pay by sunrise." She stared right at the driver, a man with a scar like a comma on his cheek. She memorized it. Sisters are blessed that way. I called Felix Harper and asked about liens. He said a stack had grown against my lot, fees on fees, filed through a courier that never signed returns. He whispered, "Your of filings look industrial." I thanked him and stared at the blinking device. I knew what it was, a cheap timer. I cut the tape. At sunset, I sat on the porch with my extinguisher and Bible. Karen's silhouette hovered 2 houses down, under the streetlight near the mailbox cluster. She looked like a scarecrow that learned law. My phone buzzed, "Sunrise." I answered nothing. Owls woke. The neighborhood held its breath like it was waiting for a punch. Just before 3 a.m., the smell slammed me, gasoline, thick and mean. A whisper of flame crawled under the siding, then roared up the wall, fast as a lie. I sprayed the extinguisher. It coughed white and died. Another flame bloomed at the back corner like it had been planted there earlier, patient. Heat pressed its palm against my cheeks. I ran outside with my photo albums and 2 case files, because even judges pick favorites. I called 911 with my hands shaking like cotton leaves. The roof gave way in a shower of sparks. The oak glowed red at the edges like a saint in pain. Neighbors gathered in pajamas and old t-shirts. Someone filmed. Someone cried. Zadie arrived, yelling my name so loud it sounded like sirens. Karen stood across the street with her pearls catching light. She lifted her phone, pretending to call, lips curved wrong. Her smile was a secret the night didn't want to hold. I watched 40 years burn in 40 minutes. My gavel from the day I took senior status turned black and split. The porch swing chains melted into dripping silver. The front windows burst into diamonds that cut nothing. I felt empty and full, like grief had eaten rage and grown stronger from the meal. Dawn broke on a skeleton. The arson investigator found 3 start points, a simple timer, and boot prints that stepped around the camera's blind spot like a dance someone taught them. He said, "Accelerant and intent." I said, "Karen." He wrote it down without nodding. The ash settled around our ankles like pale snow. 3 days later I wore a black robe that smelled like smoke because everything I owned did. I took the bench. The bailiff called Ferris Hollow versus me. The door opened. Karen walked in with a binder labeled, "Compliance," pretending nothing had happened. The room tilted. I lifted the gavel and time split. I breathed once, slow. "We'll proceed," I said, voice steady, then added, "And note for the record I will be making disclosures." The court reporter's keys chattered like rain. Karen approached counsel table alone, no lawyer. She liked to be her own storm. She set down that shiny binder as if it were scripture. "Your Honor," she said, sweet as syrup, "Ferris Hollow seeks unpaid fines for noncompliance." She listed crimes like unauthorized wind chime. My house's ashes felt loud inside my suit. I stared at her ring, a tiny anchor, same as the watermark on Meridian anchor forms. I'd seen that symbol on old fraud files. "Do you represent Meridian anchor as well?" I asked. Her eyes flickered. "We are a client," she said too quick. The clerk passed up the lien packet. On the top, the notary's name scraped my memory, Anya Sable. In a custody case, Anya had notarized a document without the signer present. Pattern, pattern, pattern. I announced a brief recess and called chambers. I told the story, fire, liens, symbol, plain and undersalted. I said I'd recuse from any matter concerning Ferris Hollow and refer to rotation. Ethics mattered, even inside a burning life. Still, in that 10-minute pause, I studied the papers like a miner with one last candle. A transaction number linked payments to a bank on Finch Quarry Road. The account name, Anchor Community Services, LLC. The signatory, Dorian Pike. Sweaty Dorian, I wrote in my blue notebook. My hand didn't shake. The anchor ring, the globe watermark, Dorian's signature, the notary's bad habits, brick by brick, the wall showed a door. We returned. I recused on the record and transferred the case. Karen smiled like she'd won something, which helped me keep my own face calm. As she left, a man opened the door for her, a scar on his cheek like a comma, the van driver. He glanced at me, bored. He smelled like smoke. Zadie waited in the hall with coffee and a look that meant war. "The notary is rotten," I said. "The treasurer too," she replied. Scarface drives her. We made a plan without saying plan. I would call Felix and the county bank examiner. She would find Anya through a friend at the leasing office. As Karen turned the corner, she loosened her scarf, revealing a tiny tattoo below her ear, another anchor inked thin. I wrote "anchor tattoo" and underlined it 3 times. I once told a jury, when you see the same mark on different doors, you're not looking at neighbors. You're looking at a hallway. We went quiet the way hunters do. Felix pulled filings, sending me scans with stamps half-inked. Dozens of liens across Ferris Hollow flowed to Anchor Community Services, then to a shell called Pale Harbor Holdings, registered in Delaware under a manager named K. Wynn. Karen's maiden name, Wynn. We were finding footprints in snow. Zadie found Anya's Instagram showing stacks of notarized forms and a caption, "Another bag secured." There was a globe charm on her bracelet. She geotagged at a coffee shop on Dappled Lark Street. Zadie walked in there at noon wearing her church hat and asked for directions. Anya's eyes went nervous fast. I met Dorian at a diner called Slate Spoon off Route 19. He folded like damp paper when I said, "Audit." He told me Anchor demanded kickbacks from contractors, inflated fines, filed false liens, laundered through gift cards and community improvement fees. His hand shook. He wiped sweat with a napkin until it tore. "You didn't cut my brake line," I said. He shook his head so hard his glasses slipped. "They used a kid named Rook," he whispered. "Scar on his cheek. He likes fire." The name fit too well. Dorian handed me a flash drive like a confession. "If I disappear," he said, "check the lake." The files showed a map of our neighborhood as a profit machine, fences, mailboxes, paint shades tied to fee schedules. Names of seniors and single moms circled in neon. People like me and Zadie, easy to intimidate, hard to replace. There were memos labeled escalation, timelines like clocks. Karen's initials sat heavy in every margin. We brought the drive to the district attorney, a woman named Mavis Perdue who wore sneakers to run between hearings. "This is ugly," she said, "and bigger than ugly." She looped in state investigators, financial crimes. I told her I'd sit on the sidelines. She told me to bring everything: notes, receipts, scars, fire. That afternoon, my mailbox held a sympathy card with glitter. Inside, "We're so sorry about your loss. Please remit past due balances immediately." Someone had glued a tiny Anchor sticker near the signature. I saved the envelope for prints. Sometimes the devil forgets he's not alone in the room. He leaves his fingerprints on cupcakes. That night, Dorian sent a final text. "Meeting tonight, Birch Hayes Storage, Unit 27. Ledgers in tote." I told Mavis. She told me to keep my distance and promised a team. I promised, then sat in my truck 2 blocks away anyway. Old habits die hard. So do stubborn men with burned houses. Agents moved like quiet weather down Birch Hayes Lane. I stayed back, palms sweating. Karen stacked ledgers in a neat tower like it was Jenga night. Rook paced, scar bright under fluorescent lights. He kicked a box and laughed without music. The unit smelled like receipts, printer ink, and the ghost of gasoline. Mavis texted, "Hold." Then, "Go." Agents swept in. Karen froze, eyes darting for exits like a fly in a jar. Rook grabbed the gas can, then saw the badges and set it down slow. Karen smiled, small and shiny. "We're just reorganizing files," she said, a line shot from a little theater she loved. They seized the ledgers, the debit cards, the stamp kits, the burner phones. Anya showed up late, breathless, and dropped her purse when she saw the box labeled Notary. Mavis thanked me for staying outside. I nodded and felt the old courtroom drum in my chest. Truth has a sound. It's heavy and clean. 2 nights later, as I left the courthouse, a car rolled from the shadow of a magnolia. Rook leaned out, arms straight, and fired at the sky, not me, a warning that said they still had teeth. The bullet cracked the parking lot light. Glass rained. I dove behind a concrete planter and tasted dirt, metal, fear. The next attempt wasn't a warning. I opened my front gate and heard a tiny click. A tripwire snaked to a homemade device, an idiot's bomb wrapped in tape. I stepped back slow, called Mavis, then watched the bomb squad carry it out like a sick dog. "Attempted murder," she said. I nodded and breathed. The court granted restraining orders that felt like paper ropes. Still, ropes help if you hold on. Zadie moved in with me at a little rental on Huckleberry Bend. We slept in shifts. She kept the blue notebook on the nightstand with a pen on top like a sword. We prayed with our eyes open. Within days, a warrant landed. They arrested Karen, Dorian, Anya, and Rook, plus 2 contractors who'd lost brake parts, plus a bank clerk who'd not noticed signatures. Karen kept smiling, pearls straight. "This is a misunderstanding," she said to the news van on Morrow Glen, camera blinking red like an accusation only the guilty see. Dorian flipped, then flipped again. Rook refused to talk. His scar smiled for him. Anya asked for a deal and sang numbers like lullabies. The anchor symbol showed up everywhere. In texts, on invoices, on a coffee mug. I felt older and also brand new, like starting over with a cane and a sword. Mavis caught Karen at the depot while the bus driver smoked a last cigarette. Pearls, binder, ticket, 3 props from a play that was ending. The judge assigned to the case, Honorable Pilar Easton, ran a tight courtroom where words mattered. I sat in the second row with Zadie, hands folded, heart pacing like practice. The case wasn't a legal textbook, it was a story about greed wearing a cardigan. Mavis laid it out simple: fake fines, false liens, identity theft, brake tampering, arson, intimidation. The ledgers sang backup. The anchor symbol hummed the melody. Dorian confirmed the chorus. Anya harmonized. Rook stared at the table like it could save him. Karen testified, tailcoat by her lawyer. He said, mismanagement and administrative errors. He blamed volunteers and passionate enforcement. But the jury saw the map, the fake signatures, the shell companies, the gas can, the scar, the timer. They saw my burned house in photos that still made the room smell like smoke to me. When my turn came, I told the truth like a bedtime story, calm, ordinary words carrying heavy things. I spoke of letters, rocks, broken brakes, the matchbook, the anchor ring. I mentioned Zadie's fear and my ash-filled coat pockets. I did not cry. Judges learn to bleed on the inside when the lights are on. The verdict hit like rain on a tin roof. Loud, cleansing, unstoppable. Guilty on counts that mattered. The court imposed sanctions that mattered more to me than prison: $2 million in fines, restitution to every neighbor fleeced, and an order dissolving Anchor Community Services and any shell that tried to grow from it. Karen's smile finally broke. It was a small sound, like porcelain cracking in a quiet sink. Rook stared at the floor. Anya cried without mascara, for once. Dorian disappeared into witness protection rumors whispered like ghost stories. The anchor symbol, that smug little shape, looked suddenly like a handcuff closed too tight.